There will be a tsunami community drill in Carenage on Wednesday. That is tomorrow. Why? I've got Ria Peer, who's a hazard mitigation specialist, along with Lisa Hensel, who's a communications technician at the DMRC, Diego Martin Regional Corporation. Welcome to the show, ladies. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, it's great. Ria, why?
So this is part of an ongoing project. The project started last year. It is a UNESCO IOC project, and its aim is to reduce the vulnerabilities of coastal communities among member states. So Carenage was chosen as a coastal community, obviously for its vulnerable capacities, to pilot this program. So it's part of an ongoing community preparedness. We have developed SOPs, which are standard operating procedures for the Carenage area. So this drill is really just to test those plans that were already developed. And we have the support of the DMRC very goodly. So we would not have been able to do it without them. So that's really the aim of this drill, is to test the SOPs that have been developed and to tweak it to see how they could work, how they can't work, to test the different maps that were developed, the inundation zones, the evacuation zones, etc., etc.
It's become increasingly important because just a couple of weeks ago, over the last 2 weeks, we saw in the news that there were tsunami alerts for several coastal areas across the Caribbean. What's the reality that Trinidad and Tobago needs to wake up to, especially those who live on the coastal front lines?
I mean, it was quite serendipitous, I think, that the Jamaican/Cuban earthquake tsunami warning happened, because it really shed a lot of light on what, you're right, we do need to wake up to it. We are a coastal community, we're an island. By definition, we have coastal communities. So for Trinidad and Tobago, we haven't been affected by a tsunami for a while historically, but we have been in the past. So it's something, it's not necessarily specific to tsunamis because it's all coastal hazards in particular. And it is something that we need to wake up to, which is why this project is so important. Yes, Carenage is the pilot community, but we're hoping to be able to roll out this initiative across coastal communities within Trinidad and Tobago.
But Ria, a lot of people will say, tsunami isn't a term that we grew up using here in Trinidad and Tobago.
Correct. It's not, but it's a reality. Our changing realities, our global realities, are that people just need to be a little bit more aware of what are the potential hazards around them. It's not, we're not trying to scaremonger anybody into anything, into creating any panic, but what we're trying to do is provide information. Preparedness is the opposite of panic. Once you know what to do, you'll be fine. So that's the aim, just to sensitize people, sensitize communities to know what to do, so that you don't freak out and panic every time there's an earthquake or you hear something on the news. It's okay, we can deal with it. This is what we're trying to do.
Lisa, I want to bring you in the conversation here because your community will actually be where the drill is taking place. When you look at Carenage and you hear about the coastal areas of Trinidad and Tobago, how important is this for you as as a communications technician? How important is this for you to get the message across to your community in the Diego Martin area?
Thank you, Ryan, for bringing me in. Diego Martin we have been hit by quite a few disasters. I mean, we're always in the news when it comes to natural hazards. And we have actually had these tsunami drills before. However, this one is a little different. And we are quite proud to be part of this pilot project, so to speak, that ODPM has called us on. I've worked in the field for many years as a volunteer, and just of recent have become an employee with the corporation. So I have a little experience in these tsunami drills that we've done before, hence the reason that I'm sitting here with Ria now. So we were able to work both the previous as well as the current. But this current project, I am very proud to have Carenage and the Diego Martin Regional Corporation Disaster Management Unit. We're able here to test our SOPs, once again, standard operating procedures, and we're able to work along with all the other agencies and first responder agencies, those are, in order to get the job done. In our business, practice definitely is a plus. Exercise, exercise, exercise are the three key words, and it's very important to practice your plans. ODPM preaches that. And I'm not sure people actually realize how important it is to exercise your plans.
How are you guys going about this exercise? What can the community of Carenage expect on Wednesday?
I don't know, both of us could answer that one actually.
So on Wednesday, the drill is scheduled from 10 to 12, so 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. At some point in time, obviously, we can't tell you what time because that will defeat the purpose of the exercise.
Like an alarm bell ringing.
Yes, exactly that. So there will be sirens going off. Once you hear a siren for more than 1 minute, the bells for St. Peter's RC Church will also be rung continuously. So once anybody in the area hears that, it's between School Street and Abu Pujad Street specifically, because I mean, that's the key residential section, as well as you have the health center, the police, and both the Carenage Girls and Boys School in that area. So once anybody in that area hears a siren or the church bells ringing for more than a minute, the instruction is to seek higher ground. In this particular instance, for our drill, the purposes of this drill, the designated muster point, the recreational ground at the corner of Hague Street, so that will be right in front of the Carenage Community Complex. And the second muster point is the Carenage Girls School. So, I mean, generally, that's considered a safe zone. By all means, if anything ever happens beyond that, you're free to go higher. But the mapping, because we had Spanish energy consultants, IH Cantabria, they did an entire modeling exercise. So we now know that once you get to the girls' school, or even a little beyond that actually, the girls' school and the recreational ground, those are safe zones, you will be fine, it's okay. Obviously, as I said before, you're more than welcome to go even higher if you want to. The higher, the better. But for the purposes of this drill, and generally speaking, the girls' school and the recreational ground are considered tsunami safe zones.
For the people who are actually in the community, you guys have done this before. Have you guys gotten the type of response, emergency response, the urgency that you guys are looking for in a drill from the community, Lisa?
In the past, what we have kind of done is done a control drill, where we would only include the schools, that kind of thing. So this time it's a little different, where we're actually involving the public and the residents, the people down there. So what we have done is we have had a couple community meetings to make the residents of the area a little more aware. Yesterday, actually, Ria and I were on the road giving out flyers, telling people about our meeting. We're having a meeting this afternoon for the residents so that they can come and find out a little more about it, get their questions answered, and know what's next, know what to do. What do I do? If this does happen, what do I do? You know, so it makes people aware, and it makes people, being aware makes people feel a little more in control.
A little more secure.
It gives them more security, self-security, especially where their families are concerned. Because if that wave is actually coming, there's nothing you can do but to save yourself. Just get up and go.
When we say get up and go, a lot of people may be tempted, Ria, and you probably in your experience have seen this before, tempted to jump in their cars.
Don't jump in your cars.
Absolutely not.
Particularly for Carenage. Think about it. It's carnival time, so everybody knows Carenage is one way in, one way out. If you get stuck in your car, you're going to get stuck in your car. Do not jump in your car. Go on foot. As Lisa said, grab yourself, grab your family, and get to higher ground. Don't jump in your cars, because you and your car are going to go with the wave. And we don't want that to happen, particularly in an area like Carenage, where there's only one way in and one way out. You can't do anything else. So once you get stuck in the panic of a traffic, you have nowhere else to go but to get out of the same car that you decided to go in.
It's quicker on foot.
It's quicker on foot. And you have more access routes on foot as well.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the project in a holistic way. I know that we've sort of radared in on Carenage. What are the plans for this project to go to other parts of the country?
So this particular project, we had to choose one community, so that's why the radar is on Carenage. It's not only in Trinidad and Tobago, however. The project extends to Barbados, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Antigua, and the overall aim of the project would be to get UNESCO certified tsunami recognition. So, I mean, there's a whole set of criteria. The drill actually is one of them, and testing these SOPs. So the aim will be to get Carenage certified as certified UNESCO tsunami safe, tsunami smart, tsunami ready, and then use the lessons that we've learned coming out of this to roll it out for other communities. The SOPs that we've developed for Carenage may not be the SOPs for Shogunas, let's say. Shogunas is flat.
Right.
So telling people to go to seek higher ground in Shogunas would be a little bit of an oxymoron at that point in time, because there's no higher ground to seek. So in cases like these, because our coastal communities are so variable, we go from areas like Carenage where there's road and hill, to areas of Shogunas where there is literally flat land. It's considered a floodplain. So we'll have to go into different key vulnerable to communities to get that type of information. Because right now, obviously, as we just mentioned, I can't tell somebody in Shogunas seek higher ground.
That's sort of what I wanted to ask you. When we look at Trinidad and Tobago, what is the size of this project? We've talked about Carenage, but how many other communities like Carenage are perhaps vulnerable?
For this particular project, the focus is Carenage, because we had to narrow in our focus on one community. We all know these projects have financial constraints. In an ideal world, yes, we would have liked to roll it out to Tobago, to the East Coast in particular. But with the financial constraints, not just generally, you know how these things work, we decided to make our focus somewhere where we could get the most out of it. Because I could sit down here and give you a plan for every community, but at the end of the day, I need to make sure that the resources match. So once we are able to justify that, which we have, we are able to take those lessons so that I know now when I go into Shogunas, I need to do X, Y, and Z to make sure that this is as profitable for not only the community, but for everyone involved at that point in time. Because we have to do what we're able to do, and we have to do it as best as we can do. We don't want to spread ourselves too thin and end up with a substandard product. Yeah. And in our line of business, ending up with a substandard product
could cost lives.
Could cost lives, and that's exactly the opposite of what we're trying to do. We're trying to make sure that we build resilient communities that are able to respond quickly, effectively, even without necessarily the intervention of the first responders and of central government of a particular agency.
Because they will take time to get there.
Because they will take time to get there. I mean, we all know that we have our different constraints, bureaucratically and all of that. So what we need to focus on is letting people know what can I do for myself to become more prepared, to safeguard my life, my family, my resources.
Lisa, your community is the recipient of this project. How imperative is that we spread this?
This needs to go nationwide. And actually, when I was hearing about the project, when it came to us at the Disaster Management Unit, I was actually quite proud to be part of this project, because it's something it's long time we've been waiting for something like this. And for it to be recognized by these esteemed organizations like UNESCO, IOC, and CITIC, and SEDIMA, and all the rest of them, it makes us feel like, yes, we can do this, we are ready. The people have been waiting for it for a long time, and I honestly feel one step at a time, we must do it properly, as Rhea clearly said, because it makes no sense putting half plans into place, because you might as well don't. You might as well don't, because it's not going to matter. And in this industry, we need to be so careful, because the population is so diverse that we have to be very careful in putting these things in place.
You know, Rhea, I just want to ask you as well. And I could laugh at it, because I generally believe that we didn't grow up, at least I didn't grow up, you know, with tsunami. Has climate change changed the ball game for Trinidad and Tobago?
In terms of tsunamis, I wouldn't say in terms of tsunamis, no, because that's a different geographical set of things. Generally, yes. I'm not a climatologist, I'm not a climate scientist, but you can see it, just as you said, the way we grew up. You look at different news stories. Now, we didn't get news stories about coastal erosion in South Trinidad before. That was not something that can roll off your tongue. It is a part of our reality, and I know, for instance, the Ministry of Planning and Development has an entire section devoted to climate change and climate change policies. And the fact that it has become so important to devote that much time and energy to it, it is something that we need to look at. For instance, all of a sudden, everybody feels it's so hot. That's all you hear now. Oh my God, I feel so hot. Just as you said, I didn't grow up feeling
that
hot. And it's little things like that that people don't necessarily take into consideration. How does this affect my daily life? How much more water am I consuming? How much longer does it take for, let's say, for in an agricultural setting, for my crops to mature? What is the deficit? Maybe my yield in the past was a full 10-acre plot of land. Now only 5 acres are producing. So yes, climate change definitely is something that I think we need to take a bit more seriously. With that being said, there are different things that are being done. We cannot ignore that. We cannot ignore the work that needs to continue and the work that is to come. So it is, for tsunamis in particular, I wouldn't necessarily align the two, because as I said, it's two completely different geographical, I mean, we're not going to get into the geography of all of it right now, but it's something that we definitely need to be more aware of and more conscious of, particularly when it comes to our changes in rainfall patterns as well.
I'm glad that you said that, because Lisa, Diego Martin has had its fair share of a lot of flooding, a lot of the natural disasters that has really plagued that community.
Yes.
And the regional corporation has been stretched thin at times.
We have been stretched pretty thin. With regards to the Diego Martin Corporation and how we've handled situations before, each situation stands alone. Even though it may be flood on the whole, every single flood is a little different from the flooding before. But as we all know, that there are things that we can do to mitigate these things or to cut down on the severity of these things. But it doesn't only involve a disaster management unit. It really involves the entire state sector as well as private sector. People have to become more aware. But it's a situation in Trinidad where we need a big stick behind us sometimes because we can't say we don't know better. But when things happen, when you're struggling to move ahead or to move on or to pick up yourself, that's where the problem is. So it's up to each one of us are a part of this puzzle, and each one of us, it is important for us to get on board and do every little bit that you personally can do to make things better for everyone else.
We were talking about the importance a little bit about having this drill, you know, for those who in your community tomorrow who will hear those bells from St. Peter's RC, who will hear the sirens go off. You know, one more time, what would you say to them now? What should they do?
Come this evening to the meeting. We are having a meeting at the Caranash Community Complex on Crown Trace in Caranash, just behind the Hague Street Recreational Ground. That meeting starts at 5:30. Come and find out about it. Even if you're going to be at work on Wednesday morning, still come and find out about it. There are questions that you will have, ask us. Don't ask the neighbor who came to the meeting, because the question may not have been asked. So we're really asking as many residents as possible, family, friends, come to that meeting, find out for yourself. You may even be able to suggest something to us that may just spark something, you know? So it's a community effort, all the agencies along with the residents, to make this thing a success.
Lisa Hensel, Reappear, thank you very much for talking us through this. I hope that all goes well tomorrow.
We hope so too, and we really must thank the stakeholders within the community. We have had a really good support from the health center. The police are involved, the defense force and the fire, they're all very much on board, and we really, really appreciate the support of the key stakeholders in that community, because we would not have been able to do it without them.
It's more than a one-man effort, isn't it?
That's for sure.
Good luck, ladies.